Well, thank you so much for being here this morning. Thank you for the music band, and thank you for those who have shared announcements with you, those who are leading classes and things like this. And this makes church what it is. And so I'm really thankful for that. We're in a series called What Love Does. Christianity Lived Out 24/7, 365. And what we want to do, and by the way, I'm Pastor Joey, and it's my privilege to lead in this series and the themes, some of the themes that we'll be looking at, but it's also my privilege to incorporate some new faces and some new persons maybe that you aren't accustomed to seeing here on the stage. And so we'll have, even this morning, we'll have a guest making a presentation here as part of the message. And so I hope you come expectant and looking forward to that. It'll be a great series from that standpoint. What Love Does, Christianity Lived Out 24/7, 365. We'll be looking at some of the application passages in Paul's letters, and the first passage that we'll be looking at is in Romans 12, 9 through 21. And what Paul typically does in his letters is that he begins the letter, he writes about theology and the foundations for all that he's going to say in just a few more chapters coming up, and he'll write about that, lay a good theological framework, and then he transitions to the application. And so what we're going to do is kind of summarize the foundations and then get right to the application and just really see what Christianity looked like when he was writing in the first century and he was living, and what it should look like in our lives today. So it should be a really fruitful study and a great journey together. I went to the grocery store this week. How many of you ever go to the grocery store and you're going to pick up some produce, and so you tear off one of those little plastic baggies and you never know which end is the one that's supposed to open up, and by the time I'm flicking that thing all around, it's like, I'll just forget the bag, put them in the cart, let's go. They can scan it at the register. Sometimes that's the way I feel when it comes to looking at a specific passage of Scripture. Is what end do I need to approach this thing at? Do I come up from the top down, bottom up, side in? How do we approach this particular phrase or verse that Paul is giving to us? Because sometimes they can be challenging like that. And so I've been kind of wrestling with it here for the last few days. And so we'll be looking specifically at Romans 12:9. 12:9, but I'm going to go ahead and read all the verses here in Romans 12:9 through 21, because I think you're going to see some things as a result of seeing the bigger picture. And so it reads like this in slide number 2, and just follow me along. Love must be sincere. That's last week's message. Hate what is evil, cling to what is good. That's this week's message. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. Verse 14, bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those, slide 3, rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. Notice how these are just quick. John R.W. Stott, commentator, calls these staccato imperatives. Staccato is a quick, choppy, I think it's a musical term in how a rendition of a piece of music is to be rendered. Short and quick notes, or short and quick, choppy kind of feel. And then the imperatives as you study language, especially the language in which the Romans was written, the Greek language, the imperative is verbs have tense, voice, and mood. It's a mood, and so in other words, it's the command mood. It's Paul pressing the pen really hard when he writes these words, and he's writing them quickly because he's not wanting to elaborate. He just wants to succinctly state what Christianity is to look like, and he wants to do it quickly and let them kind of fill in the gaps. And let the renewal of their minds, the transforming of their minds, begin to take hold of these things and these words and these exhortations and commands and begin to live them out. Verse 18, so you notice how quick and short and choppy they are, but how powerful they are when they're lived out. Verse 18, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath, for it is written, it is mine to avenge, I will repay, says the Lord. Slide 4, verse 20. On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And we will take some time to understand all those phrases and verses in the days ahead. So just stay with the series, and we'll eventually get to the verses maybe that you have a question about, the verses that maybe you're not sure which end you open from, right? How do you approach this thought? And so when we look at these, we see a comprehensive picture of Christian love. Paul tells us that love is sincere, it is discerning, that's today's message, it is affectionate and respectful, it is both enthusiastic and patient, it is both generous and hospitable, it is both benevolent and sympathetic, it is marked by harmony, humility, and wow, wouldn't our world be different? Wouldn't our family be different? Our marriage be different? Our church be different? When we live out 365, 24/7, 365, these exhortations, these commands, these staccato commands that Paul gives us here. Very powerful word. If we go back to slide number 2 and read a little more slowly and carefully here, love must be sincere. And for some people, and that was last week's message, and for some people it may come as a shock to discover the word hate immediately follows the word love, or the exhortation to love. Wait a second, I thought this was about love. Well, it is, but the best way, or as we look at this, what Paul is trying to say, sometimes there are some things that we must hate. In other words, love has boundaries. If you never have boundary, you're not loving. So parents understand this, and we're going to have a guest presenter today talk a little bit about boundaries and how really boundaries keep everybody safe. If it comes to a game, you keep people safe. Boundaries keep you safe on the road. If you're driving a car and there's a steep hill like in West Virginia, you need the guardrails. They keep you safe. Parents need boundaries. Kids need boundaries. We all need boundaries. And love, true love lived out 365, 24/7, has to have boundaries. And there are some things that we must hate, and there are some things that we must love. And I like what he says here. He says, love must be sincere, yes, but hate what is evil. And hate is not a mild word. He doesn't just say, just choose what's not evil, okay? Just choose it. No. He's calling forth emotions, deep inner sentiment that we feel from deep within us. He wants us to hate what is evil. And the best way to really understand the deep sentiment and the deep emotional appeal that he's asking for here is, maybe word picture would help us. If you've ever gone out of town and you left a gallon of milk in the fridge for 2 or 3 weeks, and you come back, and I think the expiration date on a gallon of milk maybe is 3 or 4 days at the most past the expiration date, and then you're going to get a little aftertaste, and it gets really ugly after that, okay? 2 or 3 weeks, you come back, and I don't know why we do this. We should know what this thing smells like, but we got to smell it, right? We take it off, and we go, oh, wow, and we pour it down the drain, we wash the gallon jug out, and we get rid of it, our plastics, recyclables, whatever we do with it. We all done that, but that's the word picture that Paul wishes for you to bring to mind when he uses this word, hate what is evil. It's that face you make when you smell that 2 or 3 week old expired gallon of milk. That's what he wants you to do with evil. Now we're going to define evil in just a second. But just know that that's part of love. And when you see what evil can do to a boy of yours that has so much potential, and you see bad decisions or relational decisions or addictions take hold of that boy's life or that girl's life, and you see how it cheats them out of a life of blessing, a life of magnifying the beauty of who God is and who Jesus is, when you see that kind of stuff happen in the lives of people you love, it's that, oh, I can't stand this stuff of what it's done to their life and what it's done to my life and maybe what it's done to a marriage. You acquire a hatred for such things. Now, he never exhorts us to hate people. This is never about people. But he exhorts us to hate what is evil, not evil people. But to hate what is evil. And what is evil is a life lived with no boundaries. A life lived, you can go do what you want to do, say what you want to say, buy what you want to buy, give yourself to what you want to give yourself to. If you want to turn away from authority, you can do that in your life. But there's not a lot of safety in it, and you're going to self-destruct, and this thing's going to go south in a hurry. Many times that's what happens. But love learns to hate what is evil because of what it does. And now, what to people's lives. Also, love must cling to what is good. And the word cling is a very strong term. It's a word that's used for marriage, for cleaving. It's a word that means to stick like glue with, or to not ever to leave it, to never be separated from this thing we call the good. And so, Romans 12:9 states 2 specific things about love. First, true love is genuine. Love must be sincere, says the author. And the way that you know it's sincere are by actions, and love does with a pure motive. If we look on slide number 5, you're going to see last week's message. In case you weren't here, we talked about how love does. And true love, sincere love, is a due proposition. You can say love, you can buy love and send it in a Hallmark card, you can do a lot of things like that, but love in the final analysis does. Love does. But it's not love. Love does. And what we learned last week was that love does with a pure motive. If we go to the next slide, love does with a pure motive. In slide number 6, we were choosing authenticity over hypocrisy. That's true love. To be, and that is a gift sometimes, just being authentic, being real with your life and open. And what was the quote last week? If we share our successes, we build walls, but if we share our failures, we build bridges. And many times that's true. And learning how to share our failures sometimes builds a bridge. It's authentic Christianity. And that's one of the first acts of love in this litany, this great litany list of miscellaneous things that you can do to live out love 24/7, 365. Just start being authentic. Be real. Not fake. Be real. If you struggle, it's okay. Just share it. If you're going through a tough place, it's okay. Be real with it. That's what love does. And that's a gift, because that creates an atmosphere in a family, in a marriage, in a church. That creates a place where the love can thrive. That's a gift. And so Paul starts right there. Okay, and that's what we looked at. And so we see that love does with a pure motive. And today what we're going to see is that love does with a listening ear, or we could say, and I'll explain a little more in a moment, to hate what is evil, cling to what is good. Paul is calling us to be discerning. He's calling us to be attentive, to listen in such a way that we understand God's heart. We listen, we learn, we listen to other people. And in listening to others, and in paying attention to what works, what doesn't work in life, in paying attention, we get insight into what is good and what is evil. What does he say in Romans 12, 1 and 2? He says, to present your bodies a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable act of worship. Don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may approve or verify what is good, acceptable, what is acceptable and sincere and good. And good. What is good? You see, this is a journey. This thing called love is a journey. And part of love is discernment. And when you live a discerning life, you're listening to the Lord. You're trying to. I heard a pastor recently say he referred to those unidentified internal promptings as UIPs. UIPs. Unidentified internal promptings or impressions. And sometimes it's important for us to listen to the voice of God. It's important for us to listen and be discerning to know what those are in any given situation. And I think we would all hear those more if we weren't so distracted. And so Paul is encouraging us to be attentive, to listen, to stop the distraction, to stop tweeting for a little while, or Instagramming for a little while, or Facebooking for a little while, or just turn off the political stuff from the TV every now and then. Give yourself some margin in your life to be able to listen, to be discerning. Now, there's a time for all of those things, but Paul says, I want you to hate what is evil, to cling to what is good. Real or sincere love demonstrates itself by doing, by actively helping, and that's last week's message. But it's not just blind actions for everyone's agenda. It's not just blind. Biblical love is not blind. It is alert. It is attentive. It sees. And it is looking for what is good, what is evil, discerning motives and intents, and living your life in light of what you're sensing. Those unidentified internal promptings, those UIPs in your life, you're creating enough room in your life where God can speak and you can hear and you can make these determinations. Now, of course, God defines what good is, and for those of us who are so distracted that we would never take time. He gives us things like 10 Commandments and other boundaries that just are they shout so loudly and so clearly we can never miss them. And I'm going to have a guest guy come up and talk a little bit about that in just a minute here, in about the bottom third of this message. But biblical love is also discerning. Biblical love is not blind. I'll say it again. Love is a discernment which is able to see what is truly loving in the end. You see, we're going for deeper love in the series. Not just shallow love. Deeper love. Deeper love is authentic. Deeper love is discerning. Deeper love listens. Is attentive. And if you look at our context and we try to answer the question, well, what's evil, Joey? What's good? It's like me in the grocery store with my avocados, right? What end of this thing? What is good? What is evil? How does this thing open up? How do I see into what you're trying to say this morning? How do I place things in my bag? Okay? What end opens this thing up for me? Well, if you look at the whole passage I just read in Romans 12, 9 through 21, you're going to see good defined and you're going to see evil defined right in the passage. Now, why do I say that? Go to the first slide for me, the first scripture slide. I think it's slide 2. You're going to see, forgot my highlighter, but you can see, obviously, we're looking at the word good. What is good? Love must be sincere, hate what is evil, cling to what is good. What is good? Everybody say it. Good. Good. That's right. Now go to the last slide. I think it's like 3 slides down. Verse 21. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with what? There it is. You are, you did great. All right? You all get A+. All right? That's a biblical frame. What's a biblical frame? It's when an author takes 2 concepts, bookends everything in between, and he says, I'm going to show you what good is. It's all right here, verses 9 through 21. Right there it is. Okay? That's what good is. Let's not make it hard. I'm trying to open this bag up and put my avocados in. That's what we do with Scripture sometimes. We just fight with it. That's what I do. I fight with it. Just relax, Nelson. It's going to be okay. You're going to figure it out. And if you can't figure it out, I'll let you know as you need to know when you're actually preaching it. And that's really fun. You got to try that sometime. When you come to the desk and you got to explain something, you have no idea what it means. All right? And you're still not, you studied all week and you're still not sure. All right? He just calm down. I'll show you. And God's so good. He's so faithful. And he just showed me this. I listened. Oh, okay. Good is right here. Well, what's the good? I just read it. Be authentic. Cling to what is good. Don't just choose it. Cling to it as you would a marriage partner. Cling. Bring energy to life's demands. Be fervent in spirit. We just read it. Take time for hospitality. Love does. That's good. Cling to that. Share your life with others. Give yourself to the really important things. Be humble and learn from others. Serve others who are in the tough places of life. This is the good. Cling to it. Don't ever be separated from those things. They are worth all the time, effort, and energy that goes into it. That's the good. The good is defined with the bookends right here in the passage. Well, what's the evil then, Pastor? What's the evil? Never forgiving. Remember reading those verses just a minute ago? Never forgiving. Acting superior. Pretending that everybody owes you. We just read it. Standing aloof from the pain of others rather than engaging in empathy with their pain. Never engaging your family in relationships, healthy relationships. Living every person for himself, being quick to criticize and shoot down other people, in some cases literally. Stirring up trouble in the community. Paul says it's evil, abhor it. This right here, oh, that's awful. And see, we think of evil as being the really big things. The stuff you go to prison for. And Paul says, no, evil is much more subtle than that sometimes. It is that, but it's much more subtle. And he says, I want you to learn in your life, when you are tempted to cling to unforgiveness, I want it to be one of these. Oh, that stinks to high heaven. Look what that's going to do in my marriage, what that's going to do in my family, what that's done in our family over the years, because we never would forgive. We never would let stuff go. We just had to bring it up. We just have to drive it home every time we get together. And Paul says, you know what? A mature love, a Christian love, a love lived out 24/7, 365. It requires people who are discerning, who are willing to take time to listen, to sense what it is the Lord wants them to do and what it is that the Lord wants you to do this morning. He wants you to forgive. He wants you to stop acting superior, pretending like everybody owes you, standing aloof from the pain of others, maybe in your life and family, living just for yourself, stirring up trouble. He wants you to turn away from that, to abhor that, and He wants you to cling to sharing life with others. He wants you to cling to a new identity in Jesus. He wants you to cling to the idea of being authentic. He wants you to cling to the idea of taking time for hospitality. He wants you to cling to the idea of serving others who are in tough places. That's love. You see it? It's right here. So love is discerning. Love is authentic, but it is also discerning. What is discernment? Well, I struggled with that concept this week. It seems like, of course, it's the wisdom of the Lord, and so many great definitions kind of float around out there, but they don't really explain in a way that really makes sense. And finally, I landed on one of my favorite spiritual life writers. Slide number 9, if you would. On the front of your bulletin, her name is Ruth Haley Barton. She just understands some good things about the spiritual life. And it was she that kind of finally gave me a handle on what this thing called discernment really is. And I think it's really what Paul is asking us to do here. She says, in Sacred Rhythm, she says, on the front of your bulletin, if you need a reference, would like to see it, the habit of discernment is a quality of attentiveness to God that is so intimate that over time we develop an intuitive sense of God's heart and purpose in any given moment. Isn't that beautiful? And so what must be understood here is a vibrant, growing relationship with Christ where you begin to have your mind transformed. And part of the transformation is I can live honestly, and I'm going to choose authenticity over hypocrisy. And then also part of my transformation is to choose, slide number 7. Slide number 7 is to love does with a listening ear. Next slide. And to choose discernment over distraction. That's love. And that's what He wants you to do. And sometimes we think, well, that's weird that love would be presented that way. That's exactly what Paul wants you to see, though. Is that when we take time to listen to others, to listen to God, when we take time, we get insight on what to cling to, what to abhor, what to love, what to hate, what to walk away from, what to walk toward. We get insight if we take time to listen. And we take time to discern and get discernment over distraction. We are distracted, and it keeps us from hearing. Ruth Haley Barton says here, the capacity to discern and do the will of God arises out of friendship with God, cultivated through times of quiet listening and alert awareness. Paul is asking you to be alert. To alert and to identify, if I do this, if I choose this, if I get myself quiet, I'm going to hear a voice that says, this is good, Joey, cling to it. Making this decision or having that conversation, this allows Jesus to shine through my life even more, and that is an act of love. Because what you need is Jesus shining through me, not just me. And what the world needs and what your husband and wife needs, they need you listening to the voice, growing in your discernment, listening, ascertaining what it is, how I can please and honor the Lord. That's an act of love. That's an act of love, true love. Because you're going to discern some things, maybe even in their life, ways that you can love them more. And you see how that becomes an act of love? And so we listen and we hear a voice that says, this is the way, this is good, cling to this. There may be another voice if we just quiet our hearts. And I have a feeling that many of us would have those UIPs at work in our life, those unidentified internal promptings at work in our life even more. They're really at work all the time. We're so distracted, we cannot hear them. We cannot determine what we're hearing and seeing. And so there may be a voice, though, in those quiet moments that says, this is evil, avoid it, abhor it. It's not going to let Jesus shine through your life. It's going to tarnish the image of God in you. It's going to turn people away from truth. It's going to depress them or take their joy. It's going to rob someone of being fully present with their family or friends. It's going to destroy a good perspective on life and living. This is stuff you want to abhor. Walk away. You know, my mom was great at this discernment thing. She was a great discernment mother. And I remember wanting to go and do things, and it involved friends and girls and lots of other things. And I don't know how she knew this stuff, but she knew that she was not to let me go. And no matter how much I presented my case for why I should be able to go to this little setting that was going on, she could see right through that stuff. And she just knew, you know what, that's going to lead to a bad path for Mr. Joey. Okay? And I did my best to sell it, but she wasn't buying. And maybe you've been there before. And that's what I'm talking about, is I want to walk with the Lord that gives me this discernment edge, that lets me see and hear His voice and know what He wants me to do and what is good and what is evil. And of course, focusing on those as they're presented here in this passage. It's all good stuff. And I just want to say to you this morning that love listens. Love listens. Love is attentive. It's alert. It's quick to hear and to sense and to see, not to draw judgments. Oh no, not to condemn. No, that's not what this is about. This is about listening and hearing the voice of God. It's about discerning what it is that He would have you to do. It's about listening. It's about showing respect. It's about building relationships. And when we listen, we learn so much more, usually, than when we talk. And so this is an opportunity. Paul wants you to engage in these opportunities to focus on hearing and not just being distracted by the world and context in which you live. And there's so many things that distract us. So many things that makes discernment so much more difficult. And as I was kind of working my way through this and wanting to give you some handles on how to grow in your discernment, I came across a couple of things that might be helpful. This is in your YouVersion notes here today, but maybe some of you realize, I realize what that guy's saying up there, because I need discernment in my life, because I don't always know, what's a good use of time and money and what isn't. Maybe I've struggled with that, or maybe I've struggled with am I safe? Am I in safety, or am I in danger? And knowing, sensing and discerning when that's the case. Or is it going to rain today, or is it not? Should I hire a person for this job or not? Should I trust this person or not? We live in a crazy world. Should I go to the mall and go shop at Macy's? I might not come home if I'm in Washington. We need discernment. God, I need to be in touch with you, because this world is getting crazy. And I want to hear your voice and let that be an act of love. And sense your promptings as to what I need to do in my life or the life of someone else. So we need discernment, and sometimes discernment is not just about these don't sweat the small stuff decisions that we make every day. Sometimes the choices are big and they're life altering, like a marriage partner choice, or entering a vocation, or having children, or what to do when the marriage isn't working, or where to pursue education, or what church to attend, or what town to move to, or how best to care for aging parents and discerning that, or what appropriate sexual expression is called for in dating relationships. We need discernment. And the only way to know what love calls for in these situations, the only way to know what love would do, is to listen. And the voice we're listening for will tell us, follow love, even if it takes you to a cross. Follow love. And love challenges our self-centeredness. And so often we abhor what God wants and we cling to our own agenda. And boy, Romans 12, 9 through 21 just fillets us and lays us open and shows us what that can look like. And so if you want to grow in your discernment, again, these are in your YouVersion notes on your smartphones if you got those. I would just list 6 things here, and it might be helpful to you. Number 1 is to learn to hear God's voice. Number 1. Learn to hear God's voice. If you want to know what evil to hate and what good to love and cling to, learn to hear God's voice. Get quiet. Reflect on what God thinks about things. Discernment awakens us to God's voice. It's about listening and hearing and paying attention. And so many times God will bring a scripture to your mind to address a situation where you need discernment and guidance. It's happened so many times. And it happens in the lives of those who follow the Lord, who are listening for His voice. Number 2, learn to see root issues behind the difficulties in life. Sometimes someone said you have to listen with a third ear. And sometimes even in those, as we listen, we take time to engage and listen. Sometimes we start seeing root problems in our life or the lives of people that we love. And we can start addressing those. Number 3, analyze successes and failures. What's worked in your life in the past, what didn't work. We weigh advantages and disadvantages. We kind of file away the data in our lives on the problems we want to solve. And life experience is a great teacher. And so your discernment is going to grow when you learn to hear God's voice, when you learn to see issues, root issues behind the difficulties in your life, when you begin to analyze and think about your successes and your failures. Number 4, when you expand your experiences. The joy of life is that you can grow and improve through every experience that you have. And the longer we live, the more we can learn. And when we take time to listen, this act of love I'm talking about, it gives us discernment. We learn from what we've encountered in our lives. And the Lord uses what we've learned to teach us for the next decisions that we have to make. 5th, explore what others think. You can grow in your discernment, grow in your ability to discern what is good, what is evil, what should be loved, what should be abhorred, by talking to other people, getting their discernment, their insight, their counsel. It's always amazing to me how the smartest man that ever lived has the most to say about seeking counsel from other people. Solomon always said, you need to listen to others to get wisdom. And finally, if you want to grow in your discernment, listen to your gut. Sometimes intuition will tell you things. It's not always possible, and I don't know that you want to live your life basing major life decisions on a simple hunch. I think that's a silly way to do life. But when you look at these decisions and things that you're just trying to discern what you need to do, when you're looking at these things, sometimes intuition is that last piece that helps you make the best decision in light of what you've got in front of you. And so, how can you grow in your discernment today? What are some handles? What are some takeaways from this? Let the Scripture speak. Let your problems speak into your life. Let your successes and failures speak into your life. Let your experiences speak. Let your friends speak. Let your circumstances speak. Let your pastor speak. Through Romans 12, 9 through 21, to show you what good really is, what evil really is. And it's amazing how clear the good becomes. And it's amazing how obvious the evil becomes when we have this close, intimate walk with the Lord, when we're learning, looking at life through these different things that I've talked about, and we begin to listen a little more attentively to what He's trying to say. Now, I realize life can be busy, and life can be hectic, and sometimes we need some clear boundaries drawn. And for those who are distracted by life, there's some big things that shout out at us, and we need them. And I'm going to have Adam Tomlinson come, and he's going to share with you a little bit about that, about a foundation for discernment in our life. What are some things that you know are good? Well, the 10 Commandments is a good starting point. Adam, share with us, buddy. I'm glad you came. And let me get your microphone, okay? This guy, I've seen him on the football field, I've seen him on the baseball diamond, and I've seen him on the wrestling mat, and I've never known him to make a bad call. Isn't that good? Amen. Yeah. Talk to us. I'm going to get out of the way.
Don't ask Coach Fletchman about that, though. So a couple things. I'm an official for the IHSAA. That's what I'm going to talk a little bit about today. And then I'm also a teacher. So a couple things I've learned through teaching. If I make the students move at the beginning, they tend to listen to me more. So all of you are going to have a little quiz, and you're going to have to move. So I need everybody to go to that side of the room. Everybody get up and go to that side of the room. When you get there, I'm going to give you a couple choices. You can either stay on that side of the room, or the other choice will be to go to the other side of the room. Just don't run anybody over, please. Nobody needs to get hurt. So choice number one, okay, here it is. Now remember, this is IHSAA, so high school football rules, okay? Number one is defensive pass interference. I'm going to give you two choices. The penalty for that is We're going from the spot of the foul with an automatic first down. If you think that's the penalty enforcement, stay on this side. If you think it's 15 yards from the previous spot and replay the down, go to that side of the room. Options again, okay. So, here's the first option. If you think it is an automatic first down from the spot of the foul, stay on this side of the room. If you think it is 15 yards from the previous spot and we're going to replay the down, you go to that side of the room. Travis, I shouldn't allow you to play. I can't help it, man. Everybody got where they want to be? Okay, you guys are all wrong. That's a Sunday rule. I don't do Sunday football. If I was, I'd get paid a lot more. High school rules over here. So now you guys see me at a football game, you can come talk to me. You guys can't talk to me though, okay? Now, since you guys are the short group, let's go over there and we'll do it the other way this time. So now we're going to talk about a safety foul. Face mask is a safety foul, right? So you think the penalty would be a lot steeper for a face mask, correct? So if you think the penalty for a face mask, a 15-yard face mask, is 15 yards with an automatic first down from the end of the run, go to that side of the room. If you think it is 15 yards from the end of the run and replay the down, you can stay on this side of the room. I'll give you the choices again. 15 yards with an automatic first down from the end of the run, you go to that side of the room. 15 yards from the end of the run and replay the down, you stay on this side of the room. Now remember, it's a safety foul, so safety fouls are usually penalized worst, right? You need the options again? Okay, options again. This side is automatic first down from the end of the run, 15 yards. This side is replay the down from the end of the run with a 15-yard penalty. There's no not sure. You got to go to one side. Everybody got it? You guys are all wrong. Let's replay the down. Most generally it ends in a first down because the 15-yard from the end of the run is there. In the NFL, you're right, it is an automatic first down. They care a lot more about safety than we do in high school. You guys can have a seat now. I'm going to keep talking while you're setting, though. So in my officiating career early on, I was at a game. I was on the wing. I was at Penn High School. Most of you have heard of Penn. It's one of the biggest schools in the state. They have a pretty good football team. They're playing South Bend Adams. So Adams' coach is a wrestling coach as well, so he knew me pretty well, and occasionally he didn't like me. And the day Penn was just murdering South Bend Adams. It was 44-0, I think, in the third quarter or something like that. We were trying to run the clock. We just wanted to get out of there. Bad deal. Well, South Bend's Adams' coach, I'd called holding or something, and he comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, Adam." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Can I get penalized for what I'm thinking?" And I had to think about it for a second because I was young and dumb. And I thought, well, I don't think so. So I said, "No, I don't think you can, Craig." He says, "Well, you know what?" And mind you, coaches are very colorful when they talk to officials. So I'll paraphrase. He said, "I think you're terrible." And I went, "You got me on that one." So I think God does that sometimes, teaches us in a way that might not be what we think. We think we can do one thing or another, and then he tells us, you're being a little terrible at the moment. So in the high school rule book, and again, it takes me a while to think of these things. This is the rule book I get every year. It has, how many rules do you think are in high school football, for one thing? Somebody just shout out an answer. Did you say 10, Randy? 1,000? Well, there's actually only 10. And I know that seems like that's not very many, but there is only 10. If you notice, the book's only this thick. This is the entire high school rule book for 2016-17. Now, there are a lot of other parts to that we won't go into. But, so again, it takes me a while to think of these things. And I thought, well, gosh, I read that rule book every year, and it only has 10 rules. How hard can this be, right? So then I thought, well, wait a second. There's got to be some correlation here when I started believing in God and things like that. Well, this book has 10 rules too. The 10 Commandments. If you think about it that way. Now, the High School Federation also sends us this thing called a case book. So whatever's in this book, it's a play that happens somewhere in the country. So I'm going to read you a play real quick. You don't have to tell me an enforcement. I'll tell you as soon as I find the page that I marked. Now, I will tell you this is confusing, and you have to read it a million times to ever understand what they're trying to tell you, because they tend to use things like A and B and K and all this weird stuff. So here's the situation. The ball is free kicked. A free kick is a kickoff. In the rule book, it's called a free kick because nobody's defending it. So K is kicking from his 40-yard line. And in flight, it crosses the 50-yard line. Typical kickoff, right? To start a football game. Am I right? And before the ball lands, a strong wind blows it back to K's 45. Where it is, touched in flight by K1. That's situation A. Situation B, touches the ground and is recovered by K2. So K's the kicking team here, right? So if you think about that, the ball is in flight. It hasn't touched the ground yet, right? It goes beyond 10 yards. Let me give you a little thing. If the ball goes 10 yards in high school football, it can be recovered by K, right? I think that's the same in the NFL. Now, the wind blows it back once it goes beyond 10 yards, right? Hasn't touched the ground yet, right? K catches it at 45. So, does K get the ball at 45 in that situation? Anybody tell me why they wouldn't? Thank you. It's got to touch the ground first. It's kick catching interference in that situation. Now in B, it goes 10 yards in the air again. It touches the ground. And then K gets it. Now does K get the ball? You guys are a lot smarter than I thought. So these things are all situations that have happened somewhere in this country. Most of them, I hope, never happened to me, because I by no means have them all memorized. So I felt like when he asked me to talk about this stuff, I thought, well, there's 10 commandments, and then there's this entire huge book. So I started thinking about how this related to officiating, because that's what I like to talk about. Well, the rest of the book, after the 10 commandments, is just like this case book. It tells us how other people have done something that relate back to the 10 commandments. So if you think about it that way, it's kind of simple to see that God's already given us a book to live by, and then showed us how other people have failed to live by it or done what they're supposed to do. So if you ask me about rules and discernment, I would tend to say you just need to read the 10 commandments and then take your discernment from there. Now I'm going to leave you on this last thought. And he's talking about love. So God loved us so much. And this is just me talking as a parent here. And I really thought about this because we were talking about this scripture of love. He loved us so much that he gave his only son. I can't imagine giving my only child like he gave for us. So if you think about that, it's pretty easy to say we need to use some discernment when we read this and love each other the same way. Thank you.
Hey, way to go. Good job. That's awesome, Adam. Thank you. And see how complicated life can be sometimes, though? We need discernment, don't we? And All the different scenarios of life are being thrown at us at breakneck speed, and it's going to require such a close personal walk with the Lord, I think. And even then, we just live in a fallen world, and we have to, as we encounter these things, just draw on the wisdom and discernment of the Lord every day. And I was thinking about how Adam talked a little bit about the rules and the boundaries. And like I said, love has boundaries. And if it doesn't have boundaries, it isn't love. And so God realized, I think, that we would get very distracted. And He gave us, like I said, these loud, very clear, articulate boundaries to guide distracted people through a world that's very unpredictable. I think of what a guy by the name of Henry Drummond wrote. He says, "Take any of the commandments. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. If a man love God, you will not have to tell him that. Love is the fulfilling of that law. Take not his name in vain." Would he ever dream of taking his name in vain if he loved him? "Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy." Would he not be too glad to have one day in 7 to dedicate more exclusively to the object of his affection? Love would fulfill all these laws regarding God. And so, if he loved man, you would never think of telling him to honor his father and mother. He cannot do anything else. It would be preposterous to tell him not to kill. You could only insult him if you suggested that he should not steal. How could he steal from those he loved? It would be superfluous to beg him not to bear false witness against his neighbor. If he loved him, it would be the last thing he would do. And you would never dream of urging him not to covet what his neighbors had. He would rather that they possess it than himself. Love. Wow. Christ, the one secret of the Christian life. And so in a world where hearts harden quickly with every new and outrageous outrage that emerges, where the love of many is growing cold, we need a process to discern what is truly loving. And that's what this series is about. Will you pray with me? Father, I ask and pray that you be with us today. You would guide us in the days ahead, that we would just live out the Christian life as best we can. And we realize in a distracting world, it's good to keep the biggies in mind. Those big boundaries that you've set for us. But even in them, they're reminders that they're tender boundaries. Not just the 10 commandments, they're tender commandments. There's these tender ways of doing life. Discerning your will and living those principles out in our life. I just ask and pray you be with us this morning. All of us need a measure of discernment today. Some of us, maybe that would just, all we need to do is just eliminate some of the clutter and some of the distraction, and I think we'd start hearing you a little better. And so for some of us, it's a decision to eliminate distraction. For others of us, it is leaning into an active engagement of hearing your voice, of entering into this passage even, and thinking about this morning what is truly good and evil. And we understand this morning that if we're hanging on to unforgiveness, if we're hanging on to doing life on our own, if we're hanging on to some of these things that's mentioned in our passage, it's one of the most unloving things that we can do. And we also recognize this morning that we are asked to cling to some good things. And that's what we choose. We choose the good. We choose to extend forgiveness. We choose to enfold the lonely in community and perhaps open up our circle to include another. We choose, and maybe today, the word is to cling to a spouse that we're thinking. When we think about them, we think about that soured milk because we won't forgive them. And we're only going to focus on the expiration date events. And that's what we're going to measure things by. Paul said that was evil. And we should abhor it. And so I just ask and pray today that you would help us to see these things. that we walk out of here today with maybe a level of discernment we didn't have before we came. And Father, that we would listen and choose discernment over distraction. We choose authenticity over hypocrisy, and we choose discernment over distraction. We choose it today. In your name. Amen. Well, thank you. Next week, we're going to have another guest presenter. I'll be sharing a few things with you and having a guest presenter come and also share. He's got some creative ideas. He shared them with me. You don't want to miss next week, okay? So be a part of it, and we're going to continue this series. Let's stand together, shall we? If you would be so kind, pray for Jerry Wellman. Massive stroke, blood clot removed, bleeding stopped, long road to recovery, future uncertain. Pray for him, would you? And his family would appreciate it. You have a great day. You're dismissed.